Hi, hello, and welcome to Kraken's Campaign, Episode 5. For those of you that are new here, hi, my name's Paul. I am 45 and I'm single, and this campaign that I'm referring to is going back out into the dating world, which I started at the start of the year, and have had a few adventures since. So this is where I share the adventures and hopefully provide a little bit of inspiration for those who are struggling to face the idea of going out and dating again. Also to show that it's maybe easier than you expected, but also it's also a little bit harder than I expected. But either which way, we have some fun here. So, hello. It is Friday, the 25th of February, and last I spoke to you, I was going to go on my second speed date. That was going to be with a different age group, run by the same company, and we were going to see if it was a little bit better. So, without any preamble, meh. It's probably the best way to put it. It was underwhelming. But sit down, get your tea, coffee, whatever beverages you may need to have, and we'll share a little bit about what happened. So it was run on the Thursday of last week. It was in a new bar from the previous one, and it was actually a bar that I'd been to a couple of times before for like birthdays, leaving dues, that kind of thing. They'd rented the upstairs room for it. The age group was a little bit different. So the first time that I did it, it was an age group between 40 to 55. And being 45, I felt incredibly young and had very little in common with anybody there. This time round, the age group was 35 to 45. So I was anticipating that I would be one of the oldest there. And it was a strange experience. Whenever I arrived in the bar and I was downstairs, it's the typical thing where you're looking around and seeing who's nervous, who's also looking around, who's actually going to be there. Because we are visual creatures. So I was looking to see if there's anybody that caught my eye. Was there anyone that I recognized from the last time? I did recognize two people. One was a guy who... he wore like jeans and a shirt and a belt. He wore that kind of typical divorced dad going out after work on a Friday kind of vibe. Seemed like a nice enough guy. But it didn't seem like we had much in common visually, fashion wise anyway. I also recognized one of the ladies from the previous night. Because of her like horn-rimmed black glasses. So I was like, I remember those. Those are cool. So I did the typical thing. I had a Jameson and a pint of Guinness, and I thought, Dutch courage, you know? So drank the Jameson pretty quickly and just kind of sipped on the Guinness and waited for the event to start, knowing that whenever I knew that it had begun upstairs, I would see a couple of people leaving and going up. The floor that we had was a lot better lit than the last time. Last time it was kind of, I don't know, maybe it was because of January, but it just felt like there was a cloud over everything. And this one was a lot warmer, like ambient, and there were a lot more spotlights above the desks and the tables. So you had a better idea whenever you were looking at someone that it wasn't just like the light and shadow playing tricks on you. But there were 20 people for me to meet. So 20 women and 20 guys. It was a full house, all tickets sold, everybody showed up. So good sign from the last time whenever I think it was like 4 or 5 guys cancelled because it was a really heavy storm. This time round, everybody made it. So we love to see that. It makes things a lot easier and a lot less awkward for everybody. The first lady that I sat down with, she had started studying a master's at local university. She was studying psychology, didn't have kids, and naturally, being the first person that they're speaking to, I said, have you been to this kind of event before? She had not. So I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. I get to kind of introduce you to this world. So congratulations. I know it's really scary. Don't worry, it's fine. It's a lot better than the dating apps. But you can almost picture it like a dating app because you are effectively swiping left or right on people that you meet in real life. But at least you're having a bit of a conversation with them, you know. And she just kind of laughed and was like, yeah, I guess it's better than the apps. And her friend had suggested that she tried this, and she was a little bit nervous, but, it's cool. And I was like, yeah, no, that's great. So what brought you into psychology? Thinking, I'll learn a little bit more about them. And it was something that I heard a lot from the previous event, COVID lockdown. A lot of people just up sticks, changed their life, had a dramatic breakup, decided that whatever life they were living, they were going to go in a different way. I still think, a bit of a tangent, I still think we are dealing with so many ramifications from that COVID lockdown. I think it's impacted on how people can deal with each other socially. I think it's created a lot more introverts. I think it's brought people onto online situations, which they may have not been in before. I think it's pushed some people who may have felt like they needed to grab the first opportunity they had as soon as COVID lockdown had finished in order to get a partner because they panicked about being on their own. I still think that we were dealing with a lot. For this lady, she had quit her career, had taken up a master's in psychology, was hoping to get into social work, which is, I would say a good sign, because that's quite an empathetic and considerate person, and that's the kind of person I always am sort of attracted to. So finding that out was pretty cool. And I mentioned, I imagine that takes up quite a lot of your time. So do you get much downtime? How do you like to spend it? Her big thing was going for walks. She loved, in particular, going for a walk on the beach in Newcastle, which I have a lot of fond memories as a kid in the arcades and stuff, but that's another story. I was like, oh, that's awesome. Plus, if you get to walk along the beach, you're going to meet all the dogs. She said, I don't like dogs. I hate dogs. I was like, oh. I mean, even as a cat person, I was thinking, I don't hate dogs. I said, oh, that's cool. That's fine. I'm more of a cat person anyway. I've got two of my own. I even, and I showed her the tattoo. So for those of you who haven't seen it before, I've got like a little yin yang kitty cat tattoo on my arm, and she was like, oh, I hate cats too. Not an animal person. How the fuck are you not an animal person? How can anyone? You know what? It like clicked on me. It was like, oh, so you're one of those people that I remember reading about who become obsessed with psychology because they might have psychological issues. I obviously didn't say that, but in my head I was thinking, we're not going to get along. We don't have much in common. She's not a nerd. She's not an animal lover. It just really put me off. I was just thinking, like, in my head, strike one and strike two. That was just, I don't know where I'm supposed to go from that if you tell me that you don't like cats and dogs. That you even use the word hate towards animals. Okay. So, do you have any kids? No kids. A couple of nieces and nephews. And I said, yeah, I have a niece myself, so I love spoiling them, and isn't it great to sort of have a kid and do spending time with them and doing all of the things that you would do with, like, if you had a kid, and take them to events and give them gifts and load them up full of sugar and then just give them back to the parents. And she says, oh no, I wouldn't do that. All right, it's fine. 5 minutes then pretty much came up as soon as that happened, and I said, well, I don't think we're going to probably match, but I hope from here it just continues to improve. So I hope you have a wonderful night. And on I went. What are you supposed to say to that kind of stuff? It just, whenever you're boiling an experience of meeting someone for the first time into a 5-minute sort of episode, you want to put your best foot forward. At least she was honest. I appreciate that, and I can appreciate the honesty to it. But you start to realize how quickly you just notice who are and aren't your people. Do you know what I mean? She was not my people. But on we went. On we were sort of nudging along. The guy who was sort of sitting to my left, because of the way speed dating works, is whenever you've got your 5 minutes over, you get up, move over, and sit down in the seat, and you just sort of work your way around, sort of clockwise around the room. But the guy who was sitting there just kind of sat talking, which made the whole experience really awkward because there's a guy waiting to take my seat, and I'm kind of like, sorry, this guy. And that guy was very intense. Like, he had paper and he was writing notes, and he was running it almost like an interview. So whenever he did get up, like 30 seconds later, after the buzzer thing had gone, and I took the seat, and she was like, oh, that was a lot to me. I was like, oh, she says, yeah, he's really like hammering the questions, like, what do you do? What kind of work do you do? Do you have any kids? Like, he knows exactly what he's looking for, and he's going around the room and asking those kind of questions. Like, he told me that was his plan. Okay, not my approach. I think you can kind of connect on some sort of a fundamental level. And this is something that I kind of talked about within an Instagram reel. I'm very attracted to energy of someone. I don't know if it would be spark or love at first sight or whatever like that, but I think there's a certain way that you kind of match frequencies, and whenever you match frequencies in the right way, just you can almost feel everything in your blood just kind of singing. It's like popping candy in your veins, and you're stumbling over your own tongue because you want to talk to them so much, and you don't want to look away, but at the same time you're struggling to make eye contact with them. And I've had that a couple of times, where you're excited to see them, you can't wait to grab them and hold them, and so I would kind of go a little bit more off the energy of meeting someone, rather than a barrage of questions. I don't think you could accomplish that, because I think you could go through an entire list of all of these things, and on paper you could be a wonderful match, but whenever you actually do meet in person, it could just end up horribly. It reminds me of one of my first sort of big, awkward, terrible dates after my divorce. So let's take a little break from the speed dating, and I'll tell that story. So I'd been single for about 6 months after my divorce. I would have been 36, roughly 36. Matched on a dating app, because 10 years ago dating apps were a little bit better. She didn't live in Belfast, where I am, in Northern Ireland. She lived a fair bit out, but she had been in town that weekend, meeting her sister, and that's how we matched on the app, because I prefer to meet someone within the same city. I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility that my kind of person would be also living here. But at least with the dating apps and stuff. And obviously 6 months in, I'm thinking, because I don't drive, and Belfast is quite a small city, you've got a 10-15 mile radius, so there should be plenty of people that I match with, and I matched with her. But then whenever I brought up her details, and it was saying she lived like 80 miles away, that was the initial conversation. I was like, oh, I've matched with you, but it seems like you're way outside of my range. And she says, oh, I was in Belfast meeting my sister. I said, oh, perfectly fine, not a problem at all. So I as part of the conversation, we were talking and I said, what is it you love about Belfast? Whenever you do come and visit your sister and then you go away, what's the one thing you're always excited to do whenever you come back to Belfast? And she says, oh, I love sushi. I'd never had sushi at this point. I said, oh, okay. Well, you know what? If this conversation goes well and you want to go for a first date, how about we go for sushi? She says, oh my God, that would be amazing. Would love that so much. So I'd arranged a booking after we talked and things were vibing. I'd arranged for a booking in a restaurant here called Zen, which is like a Japanese fusion. Always highly recommended by anybody I know who enjoys sushi. The conversation ran for like 2 weeks. Because she wasn't coming back to Belfast immediately, she worked as a photographer. But we got on so well. So well. She loved horror movies. She had the same sort of fashion as me. She even introduced me to new music like Tsunami Bomb. So if you haven't heard them before, do give them a listen. She had also sent me Irish Boys Stink, was the song. And of course, I laughed about it. But yeah, there were some fantastic songs. I was like, oh my God, she introduced me to that. That's awesome. Love this. And music is obviously a language of love. So we were talking on that level. But even as part of that, I wrote Evelyn, which is a story about a weird experience that I had as a kid. But anyway, so I wrote her story. She loved it because we were on WhatsApp and we were sending files and we were exchanging so much. I remember the night before we were going to meet, I was thinking, oh my God, like we have spent 2 weeks talking like old friends. This is going to be a fantastic date. I am so excited for this. I'm so looking forward to it. Whenever we turned up, there was a fairly fancy restaurant, but she turned up in jeans, t-shirt, and Doc Martens. And I had dressed in the outfit for a fancy restaurant, so I was in like a waistcoat and a jacket and, you know, like smart casual. Well, not the jacket, but the waistcoat, the jeans. And I was thinking, okay, we're a little bit different on the vibes, I guess, but that's still fine. We had wonderful conversation. It's not going to matter what we're wearing. Don't be stupid. I just hope she doesn't feel like she's underdressed and then feel really awkward about it. I hope that doesn't make the night awkward for her. But we had talked for a couple of minutes, and then just the conversation died. I was thinking, I don't understand what's happening. She doesn't seem like she's excited about being here or happy to be in town or, you know, happy to meet me or anything. And then I realized just what was happening. I was asking her questions and she would answer them. And that was it. Like she never like tennis, you know yourself, with any kind of conversation, it tends to be back and forth. And sometimes you'd ask a question to be like the basic stuff. Any kind of siblings, you know, what have you been up to this weekend, or what are you working at as your career? How's things going for you? Like, where did you start? All this kind of stuff. She would answer them, and then it would just die a death. And I was just thinking, she's not having fun, and I became very conscious about it. She said she's going to go out and have a smoke, and I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, no worries. I'll be here. The table will be ready in a few minutes anyway. So off she went. And it was the first time, and probably the only time, to be honest, that I thought to myself, I really hope she doesn't come back. I hope she just skips. Just go. You're clearly not happy. You're clearly not enjoying it. But then I'm worried that it's something that I've done, and I'm thinking, you know, do I not look like my pictures? Because those pictures were, you know, maybe a month old. So, anyway, I started getting caught up in my head about what's gone on. Then there was the sushi. Having never had sushi before, we ordered like a full banquet of sushi, and whenever I was eating it, I realized that I'm not a big fan of sushi because it was the first time. I'm not telling her that it's the first time because I'm conscious enough already about how she's not having a good time. But I was eating. I did enjoy the calamari, shocker. But the salmon rolls, and yeah, it just I don't know, and I could feel myself like this close to dry retching, just like it was sitting in my chest, and I'm thinking I'm not sure how much sushi I can have, and she was just small appetite for her, so we'd ordered this huge tray of ice with all of the different options on it, easily like 24 pieces between us. I don't think we got through 12 personally, but that's fine. That happens. But the conversation was still so stilted. I was like, what kind of work do your parents do? They're both retired. Dad worked at such and such, but, you know, they're sitting comfortably. So, that's pretty cool. Siblings. I've got a brother. nothing for me to work with, nothing coming back, and I'm just feel like an interview. Thinking, okay, it's fine. We got through the dinner, and then I went up and paid. There was no argument there. She didn't even offer to pay. I will pay. I like to be a gentleman. I am always happy to pay. I ask somebody out, I expect to pay. That's just in my head. If they want to split it, you'll have to argue with me to get that. But okay, I can understand that for some people, that kind of independence, I understand that works. If you don't even say anything, I would be just like, really? Huh? Were you just here for the dinner? That's the first thing that pops into my head, because I'm thinking you weren't even going to argue with that just in case I did say something. I don't know. But then maybe she was thinking she's had such a terrible night, the last thing she wants to do is pay for half the dinner, I suppose. But I mentioned, we could go for a drink, and I suggested a bar around the corner, which is a very casual kind of rock bar that the two of us would enjoy given the music tastes. And she said no, she wanted to go to this other bar around the corner. It was like an old man bar. So very old, traditional, like a lot of guys sort of in their 50s, 60s, 70s would be sort of leaning against the bar, drinking, watching sports, that kind of thing, So sure, okay, let's go there. I'm thinking, all right. She wanted to sit outside, and I had a better smoking area. There was less of a issue for it. So she was sitting opposite me. And I remember this piece of the conversation in particular. She asked me about, I mentioned that I'd just seen the most recent Ghostbusters movie, the one with the all woman cast in it. And she said, she really perked up. What did you think? Honestly, I think I was almost floored for the fact that it was the first question I'd been asked. I said, I didn't really enjoy it. It felt kind of childish to me, but at the same time, I don't think I was the target audience. The nostalgia beats to it with the original cast didn't really land well with me because they were playing different characters. So it just wasn't the same. But, I respect that they tried something different rather than just a straight reboot. And obviously, with the way things had been, they weren't going to be able to do a sequel because one of the cast members had passed. So, it was okay. And she said, yeah, you would say that. What? She says, yeah, you would say that. I mean, just typical guy. You wouldn't have given that a chance. And I said, well, I did. And I'm not lambasting it. I'm just saying that it wasn't aimed at me. So, of course, I'm not going to enjoy it. But I respect it. And she just kind of rolled her eyes and kept smoking away. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is... She goes off into the bar. She needs to go to the bathroom. She says she's going to order a taxi. But cool, no problem. She says, do you want the taxi to drop you off on the way? And I says, if it's not putting you out of your way, yeah, if you could drop me off along the way, that'd be great. Because it was a Saturday night, it was going to be pretty busy to get a taxi. So she ordered the taxi, went off to the bathroom, and while I was in sort of the lobby of the bar, this old man comes in from outside, very drunk. Looks at me and goes, all right, fella, how are you? Oh, you're looking well in the waistcoat. You're looking well. I was like, oh, thanks very much. You're looking not so bad yourself. How are you? Having a good night? How's things? Oh, great night. Having a great time. What has you out? Are you working? Or what's going on? I was like, oh no, I'm on a first date. I said, oh, she's lucky to have you. Just, those kind of strangers that kind of build you up. And it's like the conversation, like women do that in the bathroom for other women. And I love that. Guys very rarely do this. But this drunken guy was just full of praise for me. And just, you're going to knock her dead. And I'm like, oh, thanks very much. It's just at the bathroom. So she comes out and he goes, oh, well, he sort of looks at her and goes, you don't know how lucky you are to have someone like that. Have a great night to both of you. And off he goes. And she looks at me and goes, who was that? I said, oh, just random stranger. She says, well, I think you've made a new friend for life there. I said, oh, we're going to get each other's names tattooed on our back. It's going to be great. I says, oh, by the way, it's never come up in conversation. Do you have any tattoos? And she went, no, I've never been that stupid in my life. Me sitting here with like 3 tattoos at this point, 3 or 4 tattoos. And I was like, oh, really? And she says, yeah, why would it do that to my body? Fair enough. And I'm looking at her going, like, thinking in my head, you've got like 8 piercings down one ear and you're in docs. Like, you're part of the alt indie community. Tattoos are very, very common for folks like ourselves. I was just thinking, are you faking it? Like, what the hell is going on? I just very, very, very confused. But anyway, we get into the taxi. Taxi's driving up my road, like the main road, drops me off. I get into the back. She gets into the front next to the driver. She talks more to the driver in those kind of 5 minutes before I get out than the last 30 minutes at the bar. Like, full of chat, asking him questions. And I'm thinking, sometimes you just don't have a good date. So I got out, gave her money for the taxi to make sure they covered for the both of us. Wished her well, have a good night. Off it went. Because she lived out of the city, it was going to be taking her away for a while. Like, normally I would stay in the taxi to make sure she got off okay, and then make sure the taxi dropped me home afterwards. And that way then I could pick up the charge for it. But because she was living so far out of the city, I didn't want the fella to be driving all the way there and then driving back. Like, that's a very long journey for me. And having been on such a bad night, I just wanted at the end, really. But got into the house, sent her a message, thanked her for a lovely night. Don't know why I did, but manners, I guess. The next day she sent me a message, so she didn't reply when she got home. But she sent me a message the next day saying that she had a lovely night. Thanks very much for the dinner and the company. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's cool. And I figured, maybe there's something here. Like, just talk, see if there's a discussion for a second date. I was like, so what's your plans for the rest of the weekend? She says, oh, I'm going to be spending most of the day cleaning. I said, to be fair, I should probably do that as well before I'm back to work on Monday. And she never replied to it. Disappeared. Just gone. I saw her on the dating apps maybe 5 years later. Still doing the same job. So maybe there was someone else. Maybe she met somebody on a separate date just beforehand. Maybe that's why she wasn't enjoying it. Maybe I just wasn't what she was expecting. But I wasn't really enjoying it very quickly into the night because it was so one-sided. But yeah, terrible date. Choking on sushi, wanting it to be over. So that's my rock bottom. There was no bond as far as energy or anything was concerned. Anyway, back to the speed dating. So the second person, we just kind of chatted a little bit. Nothing really zinged. And that was kind of the vibe for like 3 or 4 people. Then I sat with someone and I recognized her from downstairs in the bar. She had this really nice like black bow in her hair. But it was like a nice big thick black, almost like Victorian. But yeah, complimented her on the bow. We just kind of chatted. It seemed like a nice enough conversation. So I remember thinking, okay, well, at least there's somebody that I would be interested in going on a date with. So I'll probably say yes to her. Then 2 over, I met someone else. And she had a ton of tattoos, colour in her hair. It was like black hair with like red streak on the fringe. And she worked as like a social worker. So we were talking away about like careers and stuff. and COVID lockdown and music and tattoos, and the conversation then started to come together because whenever you have common interests, it's nice to be able to kind of bounce off each other about the things that you like. However, of course there's a however, it was clear that she was a little bit tipsy at this point. And I was thinking, well, maybe that was just the Dutch courage, and maybe she's like underestimated how hard it would hit her. She's been working really hard, and this happens. So we chatted anyway, but she was starting to slur her words, and she would throw out a lot of compliments, which I'm not great with compliments. I know that people have told me that my eyes are really nice and they really like my beard, and that I suit having a shaved head. This lady decided to tell me all of these things within like a minute, and it was just a lot. And I was just like, oh, thank you. You're very sweet. Thank you. And I was just thinking, why you tell me all of these things? I was it created a little bit of anxiety for me, and I'm sure that's just my self-esteem. I was thinking, why are you telling me all of these things? Like, a compliment is nice, but if you're laying it on thick, it just makes me a little bit suspicious. I can take a compliment, but if it's too much, too soon, too thick, it seems a bit weird. That's when they called the first break of the evening, and then there was like a 15-minute interlude, and then it was on to the next table. But everybody rushed up to the bar, so I continued talking to her, thinking as soon as there's an opportunity to go up to the bar, I can go up and order my drink. But people stayed at the bar and were ordering their drinks right up until the next buzzer. So I kind of went up and said, look, can I order a Guinness? And I'll be sitting over there. Can you bring it over? And I tipped her, and, that was fine. So I was thinking, okay, maybe that girl. So there's two women that I've met now in that kind of situation that I was like, okay, this night seems to be going a little bit better. I did start to notice that between 35 and 45, that a lot of folks were sort of 40 and up. There's, I think, one or two people that were under 40, but it seems like that age window, the folks tend to be on the upper end of it. And then it was just kind of dragged for most of the night. The rest of the people that I met weren't really interesting. We didn't really connect at all. There was nobody that had my kind of taste in music, or I wasn't expecting that it would be easy to find, but none of them were interested in video games. Right up until the second last girl that I met, and she was very much into board games, video games. She had one kid. She gave birth at the start of COVID, so she was explaining about how she wasn't with the dad at any point, and this kid was kind of her company during COVID the entire time. So, she'd got very used to her own company and looking after the kid on her own, and this was her first chance, like 2026, to go out, start dating. So this is pretty cool. She was wearing this really nice like a cardigan, but it was like yellow but little like daisies on it. She had very cool boots. They were like moo cow prints on them. She complimented me on my jumper. I did get quite a few compliments on the jumper. I was wearing the same jumper as the last time, the red one with the black heart on it. I was going to wear the black jumper with the red hearts with the strings, but it felt like I didn't like how it sat on me, so I just decided I'd go with the red again. So I got a couple of compliments on the jumper. It was really sweet. I think I got one or two compliments on the beard, because the beard be fluffy. And yeah, so that was like the third person then that I felt like I'd connected with, and was thinking, okay, so whenever I fill out the sheet, at least I've got a couple of numbers. So the evening ended. Filled out my sheets. I said yes to the lady with the black ribbon in her hair. That's a song. To the slightly tipsy tattooed girl. and to the lady who had the really cool cardigan. So obviously fashion was coming through, and finding a couple of common interests. The bar that I was at is pretty close to my home, so I figured I'll go downstairs, I'll have a pint to finish up, just kind of relax, chat, text a couple of people just to let them know that I'm okay and how the evening went and stuff. And a lady came down from upstairs and stood next to me, and she ordered a drink. And I said, oh, well, I mean, you can stay here. Like, don't feel like you have to rush off or whatever. I'm just having a pint before I go home. I'm guessing you're doing the same. And she says, yeah, I should just order her wine. And she says, I have to check in with friends and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, no, I'm doing the same. So don't feel like you're being rude if you take out your phone or whatever. So we were kind of sitting there and just kind of half chatting while sending messages and stuff. But then other people started coming down from the speed dating as well. So there's a collective of about, I guess out of the 40, there was about 7 of us that had decided to stay on for a drink. And we were all kind of tucked up into a corner. But one of the people included the tattooed lady, the second one. So she came over. Clearly she had kept drinking. I guess maybe with nerves. The alcohol hit her very heavy. Maybe the rest of the night had been very traumatic. I don't know. But she stood next to me and then was just kind of chatting away. But then I realized that she just kept like touching my arm, like squeezing my muscle. It's just like, you okay? But she was just sort of chatting, and then the hand came down. When she was emphasizing a point, she started like kind of like slapping my thigh. Now, pre-COVID, I would not have known this at all, but I know that is body language. That is her saying that she's very interested. But in case there was any doubt, while she was sort of talking to me, at me about something, I can't even remember what it was, just something. She mentioned, just out of the blue, she was like, oh, by the way, did you circle that you want to meet me? I won't be offended if you said no, but I'm really hoping you said yes. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, that would ruin the surprise, right? Trying to be cute with it. She says, no, that's fine. You don't have to tell me. It's okay. Don't worry. And I was like, because I could see that she was getting depressed about it. I said, I did say yes. And she was like, oh, so glad to hear that. I said yes to. So, and then she was like kind of like touching my neck and just very handsy and gropey. And the more that she talked, the more that I was like, I wish I hadn't said yes at all. And I wish I hadn't stayed for the drink. And I'm feeling very uncomfortable about all of this. But I don't want to make a scene about all of this. And then the subject of cats hadn't come up, but we were talking about tattoos, because she'd pointed to this one that she had in her chest. I was like, that probably took about like 6 hours. She was like, oh my god, how did you know that from looking at it? And I'm like, I mean, I have a couple. I could kind of guess how long that would have taken. And she was talking to this other lady, and I rolled up the sleeves of my jumper, which, because it was long sleeved, you couldn't really tell that I had that many tattoos. But when I rolled up the sleeves and they saw all of the tattoos that I have, I was like, yeah, I mean, I've got a few. And she immediately pointed at the yin yang one with the cats and said, oh my god, I love that one. I love cats. I'm really good with a good pussy. And then she looked at me and went, forget I said that. And I was like, no, you're fine. This girl was just gone. I know that 10 years ago, in a different situation, if I was looking for something casual, that would have been the perfect opportunity to be like, oh, you can make it up to me by buying me a drink or giving me your number or whatever. Like, there are ways and means to handle that kind of a situation. And given that she was being very physical, if then I was very much attracted to her, or I was looking for something casual, those are very clear signs that I could have then just started chatting to her and suggested, come back to mine for a drink, whatever. But the more that she talked and the more she did this, the more I realized I don't want to meet this person again. This person is making me feel very uncomfortable. They're completely ignoring like personal boundaries, and is now saying weird shit, which, because I'm not looking for that kind of a relationship and because I'm not looking for that kind of a connection, I just felt very uncomfortable about the whole thing. So I said, it's Thursday. I should probably get home anyway. I have to get back to my 2 cats. And she was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I've ruined it, haven't I?" And I'm like, "It doesn't matter. It's fine. Don't worry." But I left. I mean, I'm not going to make a big scene of it. It's just, this is a stranger and we didn't connect. The energy vibe thing was a false start as far as I was concerned. I didn't feel like I really wanted to be in the vicinity of this person any longer than I had to. So I made my excuses. I left. I got a taxi, got home. 2 days later, so they're pretty quick with the turnaround. But they came back and said, "Oh, we're going to do your matches. Check your emails." So check my emails. And the only person who had matched with me was the drunken lady from the end of the night. And they gave me her email address. I just thought, no. Even if I were to put the energy stuff to one side, everything else just wasn't there. We just had a nice conversation, I guess. She immediately emailed me. She's like, "I'm so glad we matched. What's your plans this weekend?" I just couldn't bring myself to even reply. And I felt a little bit bad for it, but at the same time, it's just not what I'm looking for. This is not inspiring me. This is not a hopeful situation. It doesn't give me the excitement of meeting them again. It put me off the speed dating entirely, to be honest. Not just her, but the combination of the 2 events and the 2 nights. And I'm starting to get an idea of the kind of people who are out there at the moment. And it's 2 social nights, and I promised that I would do a third, and I will do a third before the end of the year. But I'm just going to give it a break for a couple of months, and I'm going to just try different things. So I'm going to see about dating apps, and I'll do my own thing. I was thinking I'll build like a spreadsheet, so that I'm actually spending a bit of time with the names, and what I like about this person and what I don't like about this person. But it means then I could press a button and be like, how many of them are talking about pineapple on pizza? That's a controversial choice. Like, why am I swiping left on so many people? And I know easily I would probably swipe left on 95% of the people. So maybe having a sheet and keeping a track and having a look at the numbers and the way that it's going, I will I get a better understanding of which apps are kind of working for me, which ones aren't. I can have a look at maybe something like eHarmony where you pay for it, because at least then I know they're dealing with intentions and purpose, and I can see then if there's somebody that I would match with on paper, and then see if it works in person. Because as I said, even though you could spend 2 weeks talking to somebody, you could just be sitting choking on sushi and wishing that they left you with the bill. I treated myself though. I decided to be really nice to myself at the weekend. I picked up Thing. I figured it would be pretty good to just scream into the void, I'm trying not to lose hope. I am trying. It's not easy. I do feel like whenever I got back from that night, there was a part of me thinking, is this my fault? There's a certain element where I feel like I never realized that everybody was playing musical chairs, so I didn't care when the music stopped, and now everybody's sitting down, and I didn't realize we were playing a game, and now I want to play the game, and I'm like, oh, am I too late? And I worry that I'm a little bit too late, because I'm 45, which It's still young in some accounts, but it's not young in other accounts either. So it's very hard to find people who kind of match that vibe. I'm sitting with people who are in their 50s thinking, you're too old for me. I'm sitting with people in their 30s and 40s and thinking, we have nothing in common. So I'm left thinking, am I being too picky? Or my standards too high? Or is it just the kind of person that I'm looking for is a needle in a haystack? Am I being unrealistic about the kind of connection that I'm looking for? But I know that I'm not. I don't feel like I am. I've had those kind of connections before. I talked about the lady that I met in Thailand, who was the American lady on holiday. I've talked a little bit about Jay, the American lady who was living here for a couple of months. I touched on G. I make no secret of how deeply I felt whenever I did connect with them. So maybe this is a good sign that I'm not just going to settle either. Because I've been single for so long and I do enjoy my own company and the company of my cats. So I feel like I shouldn't settle and I shouldn't compromise, and I know what I'm looking for. But it's becoming very clear from those 2 speed dating nights that this is not going to be a case of just walk out and grab someone and that person's your forever person. It doesn't feel like that's going to be the case. So I felt a little, dispirited from the 2 evenings, and just felt like I don't know how it gets better than this, because dating apps are a quagmire of nonsense and people who hide behind their screens and have lost any ability for social interaction. And at least from the guy's point of view, like I'll be sharing stuff whenever I've taken the pictures, and I'll share a little bit of stuff about each of the apps as I'm going through them. So there will be more episodes, there will be more things, and I'm trying to be positive about it, and I'm trying to be, hopeful and optimistic and excited about the idea of dates and meeting people. I remember from the speed dating, one of the ladies said that, this is different from the dating apps, but also you will match with people and then it's just like a dating app. It's just a different way to get to the same result. And I thought, oh, okay, well, at least I'm meeting them in person, so at least I've got the connection. But I can have a conversation in 5 minutes with anybody. It's really not that difficult. But the more I find out about people, the more I'm finding it difficult to like them. And I have to wade through all of these people. So, yeah. It's tough. But I'm going to keep trying. And outside of the dating apps, there will be a couple of other things I'm going to see about doing some more different kind of like training nights and approaching more people in public. Like I saw there was absolutely stunning lady outside one of the stores on Valentine's Day. I forgot to even mention that. And I saw her, and it's just the corner of my eye, and I remember thinking if I was brave enough, I would go over and say hi. And I kept walking, and I still just didn't feel brave enough for that. And I am getting better at being able to talk to strangers, but approaching strangers still feels like that's something I shouldn't be doing. I don't want to interrupt somebody's day. If they're having a bad day, I don't want to make it worse. If they're waiting for a friend, I don't want to make it awkward. At least with the speed dating and dating apps, people want to talk. Talking to someone in public is a completely different thing. But I'm not going to have the meet cutes. I realize that as a guy, if I want that kind of situation to happen, I need to be the instigator of a meet cute. I can't necessarily be the one who sits back and reads a book in a bookstore and hopes that someone sits next to me. Which is a little sad, but chin up, right? But yeah, so that was the speed dating. I'll go for the speed dating again, maybe around June, but I'll try some apps. But I have to take the pictures first. So I'm thinking between Saturday, Sunday, well, at least for the next week anyway. I'm going to decide on like the 5 different themes that I want in my pictures. Like outfit choices, and then going to the places that would match those outfits and getting some pictures in there and then picking my favorites out of that. So feel free to add it in the comments if you're still here, hitting your likes and all of the buttons down there. But if you want to leave some comments about if you were on a dating app and you wanted to see the different aspects of people, what kind of things would you want to see and not see? I would like to know. I would like to find out your opinions and all of that. But if you're still here, I love your face. Thank you for spending some time with me. I know this has been a little bit of a longer video, and there's been a few little tangents, but we persevere, right? I love your faces, and I'll speak to you soon.